Hey guys, Andros here. So, I'm gonna be getting ready very soon here to go to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert. But before I do, I wanted to knock out a review real quick. I don't have the time to do the Witherfall one right now, so which is the other one I really want to get done this week, and um, I thought that it would be nice to do something a little bit different, and so I wanted to do the La Dispute song, and there were several different suggestions and recommendations and stuff. But at the end of the day, I think most people said that the best one was um, a song called Ed Benz 27 Times is the name of the song. Ed Benz 27 Times. Edward Benz. Um, and this one's interesting because it's such a strange, odd title. So I um, I went to record this song and started doing the Audio Tree Live version, and um, happened to catch the copyright thing, and then figured that the song was most likely going to get blocked on doing the Audio Tree Live one. So I decided to do the lyric video for the song, not on screen, right? Um, but also, since I was about maybe, I don't know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the song, um, I was really intrigued by the the song's like story, and then this one is it's a different sort of thing because it's almost like a well, you'll hear it when we listen to the song, but their structure for songwriting is very unusual, and um, this particular song seems to be pretty much a story told, you know, from start to finish. So I pulled up um, without finishing the song and having only heard, like I said, like probably a minute or so. I pulled up a audio track that was I believe it was with the band's singer. And it was called Conversations, and he was talking about what the song is about, like, the story behind the song, and it's an incredible story, and we're gonna go through the lyrics. Like I said, I've got the lyric video and everything, but I also have come to armed with the knowledge of from directly from the singers and the writers themselves what the song was about, which is something you a lot of times don't necessarily have the context for a song. And also, given a couple things that he says in that, there's some extrapolations that you can make about what the reasoning was behind where this song was put where it was on the album. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. But so let me bring up the song here. And again, this is called Edward Benz 27 Times, and the band is La Dispute. Musically speaking, I guess you would classify these guys as sort of like emo, post-punk, post-hardcore. It's kind of difficult to give them a descriptor, and you'll see why. Yeah, we'll get into it after the song about what I think about their particular style. Anyways, here we go.
I remember it, that story you told me came back clear tonight, here while writing. And you should know the feeling never left me, the weight of my heart when you showed me the scars on your arms. When I looked in your eyes and I heard what you'd said, how you'd probably would have died, were it not for to care for your daughter and what, how we drove in the night, still your son, how you seemed to look through me to some old projector screen, playing back the scene as you described it on a movie reel, as real as the minute when it happened, the memory moving behind me, that moment that shaped you for good. And he drove to the house and pulled into the driveway, got out to his wife, waiting frantic. She drove by the check, found that pillbox was empty, went out to the pharmacy to fill up his prescription, and came back to a locked door and could not get back in. She knocked and she knocked, but he wasn't responding. You put the key into the lock and turned it, felt the bolt slide away, slowly opened, went into the hall. The sun held the knife, standing off in the shadows, lunged forward and tackled him, stabbing him over and breaking that window. He fled up the staircase, the ambulance came, stitched and filled him with blood, while the cops took his son with his wife
That is a very, very, very powerful song. I didn't put the lyric video up because I didn't want it to get blocked, but we're definitely going to go through all the lyrics. But I think, first I should start off by talking, and I'm really glad that I listened to the Conversations video with, I think it's Jordan is his name, was the singer. But man, this is a very powerful story, and it's very funny because if you've worked in retail, so he told the story, and it kind of gave the background. Him and someone else in the band, I'm not sure who it was because I don't know this band at all. I've never heard them until today. They both worked in the same hardware store, like a Lowe's or something along those lines, probably. I as somebody who's worked a lot of time in retail myself, there's a lot of times where people will tell you like stories and you're just stunned because you're just talking to them, and then all of a sudden it just you find out stuff and you're just like, how did this reaction even happen, or this interaction even happen? And for like, because I'm a tech, right? Like I repair computers, so a lot of times I'll be working on somebody's computer, and a lot of people will just drop stuff off and just go, and then there are some people who just want to wait, especially if it's like a relatively quick repair. People will just wait around or whatever. But it's you do have these interactions where people will just start telling you about their lives, and sometimes it's funny stuff, or just random anecdotal stuff. But there are times where you will have people tell you stuff, and you don't really even know what to say. You don't know how to respond, because it's stuff that just is, it's just almost beyond your ability to comprehend, sharing something that deep and powerful with a stranger, somebody you don't even know. So what he says is that he was working in the hardware store, and this Mr. Benz guy comes in, and he's hauling in this door that he had taken off of the hinges himself. Guy's like 80 years old, right? And is struggling to pull this door in, and so they help him with the door, and I guess they repair doors and repair glass and stuff like that. So they and occasionally will offer to do home installation or whatever for him. So they because the guy is older, they offer to do the installation for him for a fee. And they go out to the house, and I don't know I guess it's just him, not his friend. In this instance, his friend helped him, was there when he came in, I guess sounds like, but wasn't there with the installation. And so he went out and he installed the door, and after he put up the door, the guy tells him the story behind how the door got broken, right? And says that it was, the house is not his house, it's his son's house, and his son has schizophrenia, and was taking the medication, but the medication was making him sleep like ridiculous amounts of hours, 12 to 15 hours, and he, I guess, got just so tired of, he couldn't keep a job and couldn't, felt like he couldn't work through what the medication was doing to him, in terms of side effects, and stopped taking his medication. And so one day his mother comes by to check up on him, and they got him a house, so he has, to give him really a semblance of having a normal life. And his mom comes by to check on him, and he's basically locked the door and barricaded himself inside, and she doesn't have a key, so she calls her husband. And the husband comes by, opens up the door, and the son just doesn't even see that it's his father, thinks that it's somebody that's come to get him, and jumps on his father and stabs him 27 times. So that's the title, right? Ed Benz 27 times. And then, the story itself is just, insane enough as it is. But then, he's talking with the lead singer, and he says that, having lost that much blood in it, and he showed him the scars and stuff like that, and he wanted to survive for his wife, his daughter, but also his son that stabbed him and nearly killed him. Would have killed him if it hadn't been for his will to survive, for his son, which is very heavy to even think about. But the reason why this story became a song is because this whole concept of his son dying, so to speak, had stuck with the lead singer. And I guess where this falls on the album, he says, is a block of songs about death. And although the song is not about death, he doesn't say anything about whether or not Mr. Benz is still alive. I mean, Mr. Benz was 80, so hopefully he's still alive to have heard, the impact his story had on this kid from this band. But the interesting thing too is that when you talk about mental illness, and I know a lot of people who have different levels of mental illness. It's and the crazy thing is how common mental illness is, and how ill-equipped we are as a society to properly deal with it, and how we demonize and stigmatize people who have mental illness. A lot of people that I know have bipolar disorder, which is a more common, affliction when it comes to mental illness. But I mean, there's so many out there, so many different, forms of mental illness out there that are so much more devastating and debilitating than I mean, it's tough to sort of give it like a level and say, oh, this one is worse than this one. But I can only imagine how difficult it must be with schizophrenia, because you really, when somebody is in an episode, they don't understand reality. And this is a thing where I'm sure he loves his father. He wouldn't have tried to kill his father, but he didn't even recognize his father. He didn't know that it was his father. And he wouldn't open his door for his mother, probably because he didn't even recognize his mother's voice. it's like when you talk about, and this one hits home for me because and probably hits home for a lot of people because of, this is the one that I think a lot of people have to deal with, and it's similar, but it's still different, but it's similar in a lot of ways, and that's, like, I'm blanking on the name, Alzheimer's disease. Sorry. Alzheimer's is just one of the worst, and I've had, grandparents that have had it, and it's very, very difficult because they don't. There comes a point, like a certain point, and it's like a switch is flipped, and at that point in time, there really are no longer episodes. It's just reality, and they don't recognize who you are, or or your voice or anything. They know from your tone of voice, they know from the way people are speaking to them that they should know who you are, and it frustrates them, and then they get upset because they know that they should know this, but they don't. And it's something where, like, if you've never had to deal with it, I would never wish it on my worst enemy. It's the worst. It's the worst thing. It really is terrible. And for people who have schizophrenia, which can, I know, manifest very young in some people, it's a similar situation. Now with schizophrenia, you don't have that sustained, like I said, that point where the switch flips. But you have those episodes where where reality is just, it's just something completely different for them. They don't know, like, it's such a strange thing, and I don't know enough about how the brain, and I don't think anybody really understands completely how the brain functions to know how something like this is possible. But we know that they're able to read situations, but because they can't remember certain things, or because of like fear and other things, that it plays into how they read a situation, right? And this is why you hear a lot of times about people who have schizophrenia doing things that are like seem like they're completely crazy, like stabbing someone, shooting someone, whatever. It's because they're deeply terrified, and what's remarkable about the story here is that the father completely understands and completely forgives his son. Still thinks of him as his son. Now, he goes on to say that the son is in prison. He doesn't know for how long the son is in prison. But, he does know that the son went to prison. The police came and they took the son to prison. And they were able to save this old man's life. And so, he told the story. And in the song, he's saying about how, it's something that has always stuck with him. I don't know when this was written in terms of time frame, whether this is like a more recent thing. Because at the end of the song is confusing to me, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the lyrics breakdown in a few minutes here. But the crazy thing to me is that there's a part of this song at the end where he's saying about leaving, but that it always stuck with him. So it makes me think that maybe this was something that happened to him maybe before the band started, like, when he was just a kid working at at a hardware store. And maybe Mr. Benz is no longer around, but that, he's saying that he wanted him to know that this story, this piece of himself that he chose to share was something that stayed with him, all these years later. So, yeah, that was that was like from the conversations part of it. And musically, this song, I really loved parts of the song. The thing that really got me was the melodies. The music I love. The melodies were great. I love the intro, the little intro guitar part, which is used a couple of times throughout the song. The do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. That, I love that part, and it comes back several times. But there's a lot of other parts in the song where there were just these really strong melodies that played all throughout the song, and not there's parts of the song where it's heavier, but the parts that I tended to like were the parts that weren't the heavier parts of the song, the parts that were the softer, quieter, more melody driven parts. That said, this is a song I probably would never listen to again. And for me, it's tough because I'm going to give this song a really high score, but at the same time, I really didn't like the vocals. And it doesn't have anything to do with punk vocals, because I love punk. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, so I'm a huge fan of Minor Threat, and so that straight edge hardcore scene is something I really like. But that said, this did not strike me as hardcore punk vocals. If anything, this struck me as more emo vocals than anything else, which emo oftentimes gets a bad rap, and I mean maybe deservedly so in some instances. But what I mean is the way he projects emotion through his voice. But the problem really for me is the tonality of his voice that I did not like. And for me, I think the clearest correlation that I can make is the band In This Moment, or perhaps In This Moment. We'll stay with In This Moment as a good example, because if you listen to Maria Brink's vocals on Whore, you'll hear a lot of the same tonality in terms of how the emotion is expressed through the voice. And that rawness is just not something I really enjoy. And I don't like it in any... There's not really a band where I've ever heard that style of vocal and I've actually enjoyed it. And I don't really know why. I don't know. Something about it is just not pleasing to the ear for me, which is a real shame, because musically I really loved the song. I thought the instrumentation was phenomenal. The songwriting I thought was incredible. The lyricism was obviously just incredible. And there was another thing that I think bothered me a little bit, and this comes down just to personal preference, I think. But as he was telling the story, I felt that he jumped around in time a little too much. So like he would tell the story in a very straightforward manner, and then he would jump forward in time and also perspective. He would shift perspective, and then he would jump back to telling the story in a narrative sense. And it was a little jarring from in terms of looking at the actual lyrics and stuff. So that I think was the my misgivings in terms of the song, and dislikes in terms of the song. So it's definitely not a song where I loved it. I would say there was some stuff that I didn't care for, but a lot of the stuff that was good was really, really good, and just a really great song in terms of how it was written, and it obviously, it's still, even not enjoying the vocals, it's still obviously affected me a great deal. So I think you can definitely say that it was a job well done. So let me bring up the lyrics real quick so we can go through this. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to. It's not. I hate it when they do a lyric video, but they don't actually put the lyrics in the thing. So I'm gonna have to actually look them up real quick. Okay. All right. So there's a good bit of lyrics here to go through. So again, this is sort of what I'm talking about in terms of the jumping around in the story, because he starts with an anecdote, which he actually talks about in the thing as being something, and I've seen this myself. I've actually had this exact conversation with customers before, where he says, I heard the old man's voice break, stutter once, then stop. I heard a sentence, started confidently, halted by the sudden absence of a word, stumbled and sputtered, trying to find it back. Something once so simple gone now. When he finally gave up, told me, oh, it's like hell getting old. Like I've been literally told that exact same sentence, for the exact same reason. And then he starts at the beginning. So he does this anecdote, and then he starts at the beginning of the story. He says, when you came into the store, did you know you'd show me your scars? And then he says, I had a heavy heart. He carried a door, which is like, what do they call that? It's a, it's showing, damn thing. It's showing the disparity between those two. Like, he's just carrying a door, and this guy has got this impossibly heavy heart. It's shattered pane, all wrapped in plastic, and he asked if I could fix it. Come by a little later, help him put it back on hinges. There's almost a rhyme quality to this. It's not 100% a rhyme, but it's pretty close. See, I'm far too old to lift it. So, yeah, actually, so now this is not just, it's not the appearance of a rhyme. It actually is a rhyme. These are like, these are couplets, basically. So he asked if I could fix it. See, I'm far too old to lift it. So he's got a very specific cadence. And it's not from my house, it's my son's. When you open up the door, What is it you thought you'd find? And then this interesting part, and this is one part I didn't understand. Nobody flinched, it says, which I guess was him talking to the other associates in the store. Is that like nobody's going to help this guy? Nobody flinch, you know? Later I came by and backed onto the driveway, got out to find him waiting there to lead me through the side yard to back behind the house where the door frame stood empty, and helped me hold it steady while I hammered all the pins in. Then later on the porch, we somehow got to talking. So see, when you read this sentence, it feels like a run-on sentence, and it's actually sung that way because he doesn't really breathe in between lines. This is all basically one line, and that's part of how the rawness is conveyed vocally. So then he says, we somehow got to talking. He told me of the house and how his son is schizophrenic. So they purchased it for him, the medication working, and they figured it would help him fit in, help him lead a normal life. So that's what I was saying earlier about they got the house and, got him on the medication to try and help him feel normal. But the pills made him sleep too much and he couldn't keep a job as a result. So one day he just gave up on taking them. And that day she had called you, he locked her outside the house. So that's the mother, trying to get in touch with him, and he doesn't answer the calls, locks himself inside the house. How quickly did you get there, and what were you thinking while walking up? What fears flashed in front of you, taunted you walking to unlock the door? I think it's important to note that, I think an outsider might say, why were they so intent on getting inside of the house? Why were they so freaked out about it? And I can tell you for certain that somebody who is in the middle of an episode, whether it be whether you're talking to somebody who's bipolar and is in a depressive episode, or whether it's somebody who's schizophrenic and is in an episode, they can be incredibly, they can definitely be a huge danger to themselves, right? And obviously with depression, we've seen what that can do, with people like Chris Cornell and stuff like that. But when you look at schizophrenia, a lot of times, like I said, their reality is not reality, right? What they're experiencing and seeing is completely different than what's actually happening. And then, so they could be seeing a situation and, and accidentally, hurt themselves or, do something that would cause themselves harm. And so it's a very serious situation. So I'm sure when he's saying about what the father was thinking as he was walking up, I'm sure the main thing that he was thinking more than anything else was, is my boy okay? And then he says, I remember it, Ed, using his first name. I think that's really important because it shows the connection that he has to this gentleman. The story you told me came back clear. So again, like I said, he's jumping forward now, to the time when he's writing the song, actually. The story you told me back clear tonight here while writing, and you should know that the feeling never left me the weight of my heart when you showed me the scars on your arms, when I looked in your eyes and I heard what you said, how you probably would have died were it not for to care for your daughter and wife, how he drove in the knife, still your son. Yeah, how he drove in the knife, still your son. You know, and that's, and it's, without the context of hearing the conversation, I think it's important to note that, like, that line at the end is came from him talking with the father and saying that, you know, no, I don't just, and because he said to him, he said, well, you've still got your daughter and your wife, and he said, I still have my son. So that line is a direct reference to that point in the conversation where he said, no, that's still my son, you know. How you seem to look through me to some old projector screen, playing back the scene as you described it on a movie reel, as real as the minute when it happened, that memory moving behind me, that moment that changed you for good. And that is, you know, you see this a lot when, if you've ever talked to somebody who is like, for example, ex-military or older, right? And they ever tell you a story, a lot of times they don't, like, if you ask, like, and you never should ask somebody, you know, to talk about their time in war. Most of the time, if you ask them, they're not going to tell you, right? And that's, like I said, you never should ask. But sometimes you'll be talking, and something will remind them of, you know, a war buddy, or, you know, or a situation that occurred when they were, you know, in combat. And for a moment, it's like they don't really even see you. They're seeing that moment occur, like, almost as if they're watching it on TV. You know, they almost forget that they're talking to somebody, and it's just they're experiencing it again. And it's the really powerful moments, or like the life-changing moments sometimes, you know, like where, you know, we're, and like, I can't really give any examples, because I don't want to talk about, you know, situations that friends have gone through. But, you know, I definitely know some people who were, you know, snipers or things like that, and you know, experienced some heavy shit. And you know, sometimes you get that, like, you know, almost 1,000-yard stare where they're just experiencing it again, and, you know, you're not really even there. And it's like what he's describing right here, that, you know, is not really even there. And he drove into the house and pulled into the driveway. Now we're jumping back into the story. Got out to find his wife waiting, frantic. She'd come by to check, found the pill box was empty, went out to the pharmacy to fill up his prescription, and came back to a locked door and could not get back in. She'd knocked and she knocked, but he wasn't responding. You put the key in the lock and you turned it, felt the bolt slide away, slowly open, went into the hall. His son held the knife, standing off in the shadows, lunged forward and tackled him, stabbing him over and over, breaking the window. So we finally know why. And like I said, this is like I believe they call this sense memory, where something will happen and it'll trigger a memory, you know, and you have to, you know, you almost have to tell the story, you know. And it seems like that was the case here, where, like, getting this window repaired just made him think about what was going on, you know. And then he says, went into the hall, his son held the knife, stabbing him over and over, breaking the window. He fled up the staircase. The ambulance came, stitched him, and filled him with blood. I mean, obviously, if you got stabbed 27 times, you're going to need some serious blood transfusions. The cops took his son with his wires so tangled. His father was a stranger. So it sounds like he didn't even recognize that it was his father, even after his father was lying there on the ground dying. And, you know, such is the incredible tragedy of, you know, a story like this and schizophrenia in general. And this last part, this last section, feels like it's part of a different song or part of maybe a larger context that I don't have. So if there's more context for this, let me know in the comments, because this last part I didn't 100% understand. And I sit in my apartment, I'm getting no answers, I'm finding no peace, no release from the anger. I leave it at an arm's length. I'm keeping my distance from hotels and blood on the carpet. I'm stomaching nothing. I'm reaching for no one. I'm leaving this city. I'm headed out to nowhere. I carry your image, your grandfather's coffin. And Ed, if you hear me, I think of you often. That's all I can offer. That's all that I know how to give. The last 3 lines, we come back to the story, but that section that ends with the grandfather's coffin, I don't understand the point, the context. So if you've got an idea of what that is all about, you can let me know in the comments. But so that's it for the song. I will give this one a 9.5 out of 10. And a song I will probably never listen to again. But it's a song that I would say that a lot of people should hear. We, as a society, need to be a lot better about how we treat people with mental illness. And this is not some indictment of this poor couple who were trying to help their son the best way that they could, but it's so difficult to treat mental illness. But the fact that this son was put in jail and probably, unfortunately, to this day, has never fully gotten the help he needs, partly because I don't think we really completely understand how schizophrenia functions and how to even go about fixing it, like even in the remotest sense. So this was a very, very difficult, boy, the reactions you guys have given me for the most part have been very difficult reactions to do. Yeah, this was a very tough reaction. Probably the hardest one I've had to do so far. But I'm definitely glad to have done it, because this one was a very important one. So I'm sure this is going to be a very long video, and I apologize for that. But hopefully it was interesting. And for those of you who requested the song, there were several of you. I hope it, at least in some small way, lived up to your hopes. So that's it. I gotta go and enjoy some Christmas music. So look for the review for that probably next week. So I'll have some live video footage and stuff to share with you guys. So, all right, Calendros out. Stay metal.